We're in a period where people's historic memory is faded. We don't remember what happened roughly a century ago. North Americans, our knowledge of history outside of North America, even our knowledge of history in North America, is typically quite absent. It's a difficult question about how to promote memory and understanding. As human beings, it is our nature to forget. And yet, obviously, as a collective, we need to remember. Genocide education and Holocaust education, there have to be ways in which to integrate it, obviously through annual commemorations, some of which do exist, but integrate it in ways that make sense to students so that it's not something that drops out of the sky once a year. The parallels, the precedents, and so on are there to be found in the not-so-recent past. And this is an added reason why it's important to understand the Holocaust. Not to mention, of course, the experience of what actually happened during the Holocaust to the victims. And that's a lesson in itself, but understanding how we got there is extremely important. The kind of polarization that we saw during the Trump administration around issues of race and extremist ideology helps to make my students understand better precisely what's going on in the interwar period in Europe, as well as to understand how someone could come to power through democratic means and then use the political system to try and dismantle democracy, and why people who a few years ago would be considered upholders of democracy would be willing to jump on board, whether because of ideological reasons or self-serving interests or other reasons. All the things that we saw unfolding in the last 4 years made it much easier to understand precisely what happened, particularly in the 1930s and even the years leading up to the 1930s. History does not repeat itself. It doesn't, the exact same events don't repeat themselves. However, history gives us clues about what can happen. And it makes this all the more important to study the 1920s and 30s through the World War II period, in order that we avoid similar permutations and events from happening.